Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started for the evening. Um, Welcome to our first go-to training of the month for compositing fundamentals. My name is Jonathan Lewis, and I will be your instructor for the month. So, looking forward to talking and meeting you guys and teaching you guys about compositing. So, this is our first go-to training of the month. So, I usually like to kind of do an overview of the class, what we're going to be doing this month, going through the projects, how the weighting is, how what we expect from you guys as far as submissions and turn-ins. Um, as far as talking a little bit about your research activity, which is your last project that you guys are going to be doing for the month. So, I have a keynote here. We'll go through the keynote, and then towards the end of our go-to training for the evening, I'll jump into Nuke and kind of show you a few basics to kind of get you guys introduced into the program. Some of the stuff I may cover may be in the podcast, but I might cover some stuff that isn't necessarily in the podcast as well. So definitely make sure that you sit through the go-to training and watch everything through the end. All right. So here's our first go-to training. Just to kind of go through so you guys are familiar with the CFM crew. The course director for compositing fundamentals is Pedro Flores. He primarily works on campus. That's him here, right here. Jonathan Lewis, that's me. I will be your instructor for the month, standing right here. And then we have our lab staff over here to the right. Now, I primarily do most of the instant message sessions and the go-to trainings, but you might, for whatever reason, might have one of these guys doing those for me. It just depends. Typically, I do it most of the time, but I just want you guys to be familiar, be aware with our staff. This is Andrew, and this is Kalel. Matt, he doesn't work here anymore with us, but that's our crew. We also work in the advanced compositing class, compositing and scene finishing. So for all you CA students, you'll see us again once you get to that class, which is later down the line. All right. Okay. So what I want to do is just kind of go through the projects and basically how Pedro and I have broken down the month for you guys. This is compositing fundamentals, so it's fundamental skills for a compositor in the industry. All right. So we've kind of tried to hit the broad strokes of what we feel you should be able to know um, as a compositor. All right. So you can see how we've had these broken up and how they're weighted. Basically, our first 2 weeks, we're going to just have one project and one discussion question. And then weeks 3 and 4, we have two projects and a discussion question. All right. So our first weeks, not as much of work as far as there's just one project, one discussion. But as we get into weeks 3 and 4, we have an additional project. Now, typically on how you guys approach week 4, week 3 tends to be your busiest week, which we'll get into in just a moment. But you can see that we do have our project SITS, which is our research activity. That particular project I have open throughout the entire month, so I encourage you guys to kind of be working on it throughout the month. Don't wait until the last week to work on it, or you might find yourself overwhelmed that last week trying to get Project 5 and Project 6 done. That being said, your research activity is weighted pretty heavily, so keep that in mind. Um, and don't forget to do it, definitely. Also, if you notice, our discussion questions are weighted more heavily than you guys are probably used to. Ours are 5% each, so that's 20% of your grade right there for the month is just on your discussion questions. So make sure that you are answering our discussion questions with a thorough answer and answering our question. I'm not going to tell you it needs to be a particular length, but I want to see that you're answering the question that we're asking in the discussion. And of course, your professionalism, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. Right now, actually, which is going to be tied to the academic honesty quiz. So if you guys have not done that yet, you'll see it. It's in your first week's assignments. Please do that. This needs to be done in order for you to receive your professionalism points. So If you don't do this test, regardless if you complete the separate professionalism activity or not, you won't receive the points. Yes, it was, and it's extremely easy, Jacob. That's correct. So just go ahead and do it and get it out of the way if you haven't done it yet. And I've noticed that most of you guys have done it, but for the few that haven't, please just go ahead and do that so you get it out of the way and you can get your points for your professionalism. Also, concept share, make sure you guys are submitting the concept share. If you look at the breakdown for how we grade, concept share is required for all of our projects. This is a troubleshooting class, so we want to see you guys posting your work to concept share and critiquing and commenting on each other's work. It happens every month. Someone will have an issue and they'll post the concept share, and some other student may respond and say, oh, I had that same issue. Here's how I did to fix it, type of thing. So we definitely want to encourage that. So if, like I said, if you look at the breakdown on how we grade our projects, at least 20% of your grade from each project comes from posting and commenting on concept share. So if you don't post on concept share, you're not going to receive those points. So make sure that you have your post up, and they need to be up by Sunday before the turn-in. So posting on concept share on Monday before the turn-in isn't going to guarantee that you'll receive those points, okay? So just keep that in mind. It needs to be up before then. Now, typically I check concept share 2 or 3 times a week. I won't always comment on all of the projects, but I'm definitely looking at them. If I see something that I need to address, or maybe that and notice that someone else didn't comment on, I will make a comment. But I act more like a moderator on concept share. I'm definitely looking and pay attention to all the comments and everyone that's posting and what they're posting. That's fine, Jacob. Yeah, just go ahead and get it up as soon as you can. If you can do it, by today, that'd be great. Tomorrow I'll probably check them when I come in to um, to my desk. So, all right. And that's pretty much how the class is broken down. All right, so it's pretty basic. We have a project and a discussion question a week until we get to weeks 3 and 4, which is where you have 2 projects and a discussion as well. Also, make sure that hopefully most of you guys should have gotten your book in the mail, The Art and Science of Digital Compositing. Make sure that you are following along with the chapters that we provide with each activity. They tend to go hand in hand with what we're teaching you for the week. So if you need to learn any additional information or additional research, or you can even use your book uh, to help you with your research activities. So make sure that you guys are using your book and reading the chapters that we want you to look at. All right. So just to kind of break down, like I said, our week 1, this is what we're doing this week. This is primarily to get you guys introduced with the application that we're using, which is Nuke, the compositing application. So hopefully most of you guys have been able to get that downloaded and installed with your license that you should have received via email. Now, if you feel like you didn't receive your license, or you can't find it in your email, you need to contact FSO. I don't deal with the license distribution directly, so um, you need to contact them if you feel like you weren't sent your license, or you can't find it, you can't locate it in your email. They will have a record and a report, and they should be able to locate it for you. So definitely call FSO support if you're having any issues with your licensing. All right. Now, that being said, if you feel like you're waiting to get your license, you can still use the free version of Nuke. When you go to the product downloads on the Foundry's website and download Nuke, you're actually going to get 3 different versions of Nuke that get installed to your machine. You're going to get Nuke X, which that is the full version of Nuke, and that's the version that we use here. You're also going to get Nuke and Nuke PLE. Nuke PLE stands for Personal Learning Edition. That's the free version of Nuke that you can use, which will allow you to use it. Some of the nodes you won't be able to use, and you're going to get a nasty watermark over your viewer, which Nuke's watermark is pretty ugly. It's a bunch of red, blue, green squares all over your viewer. It looks like confetti. We call it confetti. But you can at least still do the projects. You can still go through the workflow That being said, you can also download the 15-day trial license while maybe you're waiting for your license, which will give you full access to Nuke and NukeX for 15 days. So there are workarounds if you are waiting on your license, so you shouldn't lose any time being able to finish and complete your projects. All right. So that's pretty much week one. Again, we have our discussion. Don't skip on the discussions because, like I said, because of the waiting, it's pretty much half a letter grade per discussion if you miss it. Week two is going to be our nuke layering exercise. This is a continuation of what we've taught you guys in week one. This is just getting into a little bit more of uh, building a composite inside a nuke where you're using render passes on an image sequence and using the EXR file format, which we'll talk about during that week, which is a very popular common file format that we're using here at school and in the industry as well. And of course, you've got your discussion too. Again, don't forget your discussions and also make sure that you are, of course, posting to Concept Share. Now, week three, like I said earlier, this tends to be the most busy week for the students in our class, and this is when we go from having one project to two projects a week. This is what we call our mat creation week. This is where we teach you guys the process of creating mats or alpha channels. You guys might know it as an alpha channel. In the compositing world, we refer to them as mats, or they could be alpha. We can use mats as alpha channels, basically. So we're going to have our rotoscoping project and our keying project, which is like green screen or blue screen keying. Also, we have our discussion question as well. So again, don't forget about your discussions and give yourself enough time to get the projects completed. Especially the rotoscoping. It's not necessarily hard work, but it does take some time to get the roto done. And again, make sure you're getting your submissions and your works in progress. So they don't need to be completed, but I just need to see how you guys are doing throughout the week. So make sure you guys are posting to Concept Share wherever you're at. All right. And finally, week four, we get into Nuke's 3D system. If you guys were not aware, Nuke is a 3D compositing application. We have the ability to work in 3D space and create geometry and even import geometry from other applications like Maya or 3ds Max and use those in our composite, right? And actually do some 3D compositing. So this is going to be our introduction to Nuke's 3D system for you guys. So you guys will get used to um, you're getting familiar with using Nuke's 3D system and setting up a simple card system that you're going to project high resolution textures onto and kind of fly a camera through. All right, and this is the scene that you're going to create. Then we're going to have our research activity. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. This is the project that, like I said, you're going to be kind of periodically working on throughout the month. You don't want to wait until the last week to start this project. It is heavily weighted, so I want to make sure that this project you're very thorough with your research and you're creative with it. All right. Um, so let's talk a little bit about much more about our research activity. Of course, don't forget about your discussion. All right. Again, your discussions are weighted pretty heavy, so you don't want to forget to do these, or you're going to lose half a letter grade. Okay. Our research activity, all right, this is your opportunity to show us your creativity and show us what you've learned throughout the month, all right, and how this particular month has maybe helped you in your discipline. What have you learned this month that maybe you didn't know about? On how compositing has maybe changed your mind about the industry, or how maybe you can apply what you've learned to your, like I said, your own discipline. Um, you can use the library, EBSCO host if you want online, or you can use, um, any type of resources online that you want to use. As always, if you are using any copyrighted material, you need to make sure that you're citing your sources properly. All right, we use the APA format here at Full Sail, so you need to make sure that those sources are cited at the end of your video. Okay, but what is the media research activity? Again, um, it's your opportunity to kind of show what you've learned throughout the month. Now, we've given you some examples of what other students have turned in, and that's really what Pedro and I are looking for. All right, we want to see what you've learned visually. You can create a script and read the script and record yourself with your webcam reading your script. I will accept that, but I don't necessarily want that, if that makes sense, okay? So if you do something like that, don't expect to get the full points for it, all right? Depending on your research and how great your script is and what you're talking about, you could get the full points or not. But I want something a little bit better than just you recording yourself in front of your webcam, reading the script off your laptop. Okay, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. Okay, so you'll have the whole month, like I said, to complete this activity. So, like I said, you're going to want to work throughout the month, getting your research. Probably the first couple weeks is getting your research. I would suggest going on to YouTube, looking at visual effects breakdowns, look at how Nuke's being used in the industry. The Foundry's website has some really great tutorials and resources and videos of you can see how they're setting up real world examples of composites like for Tron or Transformers or Alice in Wonderland. So you can see how it's being used. I would suggest doing that type of research in the first couple weeks of the month when you're still trying to kind of get an idea of what you want to do for your research activity. Of course, you can use your book. You can use the Media Center or the library and use any resources available there. Again, like I said, just make sure that you are properly citing any sources that you use, okay? You can find demo videos, VFX breakdowns, and images. Talk about what motivated you to pursue your career path, what you've used as your inspiration, how you can apply what you've learned this month too, like I said, your discipline. So I've had animators kind of focus on the rotoscoping part and to kind of talk about how rotoscoping has helped them become better animators by paying attention to keyframes and key poses and things like that. So um, you can do something like that. Now, we do give you these kind of questions that we want answered. These are just meant to be more like guidelines for you guys. You don't necessarily need to answer all of these questions. It's just to kind of give you a jumping off or starting off point, so to speak, on what to talk about in your script. And I would advise doing that. Start writing a script, memorize your script, practice your script, record yourself doing your script a few times before you do your final turn-in, because your delivery, I also do grade, which is another reason why I said I just don't want to see you sitting there reading your script and stumbling over your words and saying a lot of ums and long pauses and stuff like that. You're not going to get the full points for things like that, okay? So we just want to make sure that you're doing your research and you're practicing it and you have a good understanding of what you've learned this month and what compositing is in the VFX industry. All right. So specs, I'm not too strict on the specs. I know some of you guys have issues rendering out certain resolutions, depending on if you're building this in iMovie or After Effects or Adobe Premiere or whatnot. You can use whatever program you're comfortable with or familiar with using to build this and create this. The codec, we want you guys to use the H.264 codec because it's a good compression for online. When you're uploading this to FSO or to Concept Share, it'll keep your file sizes small. Your resolution, 1280 by 720 is what I prefer. Now I know that can create kind of larger file sizes. So I will accept 720 by 405, which is kind of a standard definition widescreen resolution. So if you are having issues with getting your file size small and you want to make it at a smaller resolution, that's fine. Your running time, 2 to 3 minutes. We want it to be long enough that you do the research, but we don't want it to be too long to where there's a lot of um, long pauses and it just feels kind of drawn out. We want you to be, to the point, hit your points, what you're talking about, and be thorough with your research. So we ask that a few minutes max. Just keep in mind that Pedro and I we watch all these and we have to grade all these. So if you go over 3 minutes, that's okay. We just don't what we don't want things that are like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes long, which we've gotten before. That we're just kind of sitting there watching, and we're thinking to ourselves, these could be trimmed down quite a bit. So Keep them short and to the point, and like I said, hit your points on what you're trying to talk about. All right. So, Jacob, do you have any questions about the research activity? Okay. Well, yeah, like I said, if any of you guys that are listening to this have issues or have questions, feel free to email me or find me on instant message, and I'll be more than happy to talk more about it with you guys. Or if you guys want to see more demos, I know we have a few up there, but if you want to see more, I could always show you more just so you can get a better understanding. We get a wide variety of stuff that students do, so. Um, yeah, just shoot me an email or let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help you with that. Um, are you familiar with citing sources from your other classes, Jacob? We usually use the APA format. Do you know how to do that? Okay, like that. So any research you get from anything from the library, yeah, you can put it at the end of the video. That's fine. We just want to make sure that you're you're paying attention to that stuff. That's just for legal reasons, and you'll be doing that through all your classes. But yeah, you can put a list at the end of the video, that's fine. And that's what most students do. They just put a card at the end of the video saying, here's what I did, here's what I used. And a lot of them, put the Art and Science of Digital Compositing. That's one of the books they cite. Okay, finally, how to reach me. Here's my AIM handle. I'm usually available on Instant Message Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. If you guys have any questions about your projects or maybe want a critique or just want to talk to me about visual effects or anything like that, that's how you can get a hold of me. It's Tuesday and Thursdays, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Of course, that's Eastern time. We're in Florida. And you can email me at jlewis@fullsail.com. And I suggest using this to email me. You can use that little email thing on FSO. That's not the best way to get in touch with me. I would kind of do it the old school way and just email me with my email address. All right. So other than that, that's pretty much our intro stuff. Again, hopefully you guys are excited about the class. I'm excited to teach you guys and get to know you guys and talk to you guys and communicate with you guys on Concept Share and through Instant Message. What I want to do now for the second half, since awesome, that's great, Jacob. Since it's just us in here, Jacob, I mean, we're kind of moving a little quick here, but I'm going to go into show you some things I see in Nuke that I noticed students tend to have questions about, and just kind of do a brief overview of the intro and the Nuke. Have you started? You said you started on your project, but you just haven't posted the concept share. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's just like the extra stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in the nuker here real quick. I believe I have a script open. One of the things I want to make sure that you guys get into the habit of doing is when you start a new project or script in Nuke, the first thing you want to do is make sure you save it, okay? So get in the habit of doing this. So if you guys see untitled at the top here, that means your script is not saved. All right, get in the habit of saving your script before you even begin working, okay? Reason why is because Nuke has got a really good autosave feature. If you notice, it will autosave after every 5 seconds your computer is idle, and it's going to force autosave every 30 seconds even while you're working. Okay, so that means that if your script crashes, which Nuke can crash, it does happen from time to time, you can usually get your script back up and running and you haven't lost too much work. All right, now if you don't save your script and Nuke crashes, then you kind of kind of lost all that work, right? You're not gonna be able to get that auto save back. So that's why we like to make sure that we keep telling you guys, make sure you're saving your script. I mean, we have to remind ourselves too. It's one of those things, sometimes we'll be working and realize we haven't saved our script yet. So we all just need to be better at it and get in the habit of doing it. So again, just make sure when you're starting your project, you're saving your script. All right, also, we want to make sure that our project settings are set correctly. One of the things that I notice students do where they lose points on is that they don't set up their resolution correctly, right? So they have the incorrect resolution of their turn-ins or their projects. All right, so there's a couple ways we can set our project. We can go up to Edit and go up to Project Settings, and this will bring up the project settings in our Properties pane. All right. And here, the full size format is what I'm looking at. This is the resolution of your project, okay? Which by default, it's always going to default to this full Super 35 full aperture resolution. So this is usually, when I see students turn in things and it's at this resolution, I know they didn't set their project, okay? So this is always going to be the default, and this is usually the incorrect resolution that I get, right? It's always going to be this 2048 by 1556. So make sure, again, you're just watching or paying attention to in the activity. All of our activities will tell you the resolution that you need to set your project at. For this particular demo, I'm just going to set it to 720 by 405, which is a standard definition widescreen or 16 by 9 aspect ratio format. So I'll just call this SD for standard definition wide. All right, so now you can see I've set my full size format to that resolution, and you can see it's represented here in our viewer, okay? All right, so let's just kind of break this down real quick. I'll just kind of go through the interface here. Like I said, some of the stuff may be covered in the podcast, but I just want to go ahead and go over it again with you guys. Nuke is pretty much broken up into three main areas here. We've got our viewer pane, we've got our node graph pane, and we've got our project properties pane. Okay. We also have this fourth area off to the left. This is going to be our node groups. So this is where all our groups are going to, or all of our nodes are going to be located in specific groups. Okay. Now, what's great about Nuke is you're not confined to kind of using this particular layout. You can move these panes wherever you want. All right. So if you wanted to, you could grab this viewer pane and just left click and drag and move it maybe over here. All right. And I could grab the properties and maybe move it over here if I wanted. All right, or maybe I want my node graph at the top, I want my properties here at the bottom, or maybe I want my viewer here at the bottom, um, um, and just arrange it this way. So you have control over how this stuff is laid out, okay? And I encourage you to kind of mess around, play around with this. I notice that a lot of students, especially here on campus, tend to kind of lay it out more uh, something like this, where they have their viewer kind of off to the right here, which is fine. You could lay it out like that if you wanted to, and they have their properties kind of down here at the bottom. It's completely up to you. I know when you guys are learning a new program, it's very important that you guys are comfortable in that program. So move these around to something that feels comfortable or familiar to you, or you can just leave it to the default. Now you can save this layout just by going up to layout and save layout. So I'll save this to layout 6. All right. And then if you go, if you're ever in a separate layout and you want to restore that layout, just go to Layout, Restore Layout 6, and that will get me back to that layout that I just created, okay? And you'll notice as you work more and more and more inside of Nuke, you'll have different layouts for different workflows. So you might have a particular layout that you like to use when you're rotoscoping, as opposed to a layout you might like to use when you're working in 3D, okay? So again, use those. That being said, the majority of our podcasts are just done in the straight up default standard layout, right? Which is this here, okay? Now, a couple tabs that I didn't talk about are the curve editor and the dope sheet, all right? You guys may be familiar with these. Um, that they're similar to the graph editor and the dope sheet inside of Maya, all right? And again, these have to deal with animation. The curve editor is going to be able to adjust the curves between your keyframes, and the dope sheet adjusts the timing between your keyframes, okay? So Nuke is a node-based compositing application. So the power behind Nuke is in the ability um, to use its nodes. Okay, so you can think of a node as an operator, and we'll refer to nodes as operators. There's multiple ways we can create nodes. Of course, we can go into our groups, so I can create a checkerboard. All right, that's one way we could do it. I could right-click, okay, and then I could go maybe up to image and create a checkerboard. Do it that way. I could also hit the tab key and tab in a checkerboard, so I could just type that in and create it that way. Okay. All right, and then a lot of nodes will have quick keys. So very common nodes that we use a lot will have a particular quick key. So for example, a grade node, which is a very common color correction node, its quick key is G. All right, or a merge node, another very common node, its quick key is M. All right. So there are multiple ways to create nodes, okay? And they do that because they know everyone's workflow is a little different, right? So they give you these options, right? Of how you want to do it. Now, primarily in the podcast, we use the tab key. So I'll just hit the tab key and I'll type in what I need, right? And just create something that way. Okay, so just know when we're hitting this dialog box, what we're doing is we're hitting the tab key. All right. You can also do it through a scripting to create nodes. Um, we don't really get into any scripting in this class, so that's not a way that I like to use or I'm going to show you guys, but just know that there is even more ways to create nodes if you wanted to through scripting. Okay, so one of the things I just want to show you guys that I notice that students ask about is how can we disconnect nodes, all right? So let's say I have a node here. I'm just going to create a blur, all right? I'm going to plug it in the chain here. I'm going to load it in the viewer by hitting 1 on the keyboard. All right, so you'll notice that we've got this grade node here. All right, and the first thing I see students do, maybe they want to disconnect this grade node, is they'll do something like this. And they'll connect the blur in like that, okay? There's nothing wrong with doing that, but there's a much easier way to disconnect this grade node. All right, say this grade node's here. All I need to do is highlight it and hit the keys Shift-Command-X, and that will pop it out just like that, okay? So it's a much easier way to disconnect nodes, okay? So if you have a merge, let's say we're merging, create some nodes here. Something like this, right? And I want to get rid of this blur, right? Just select it, Shift-Command-X, and that will pop it out of the chain here, right? Clone is actually a copy. Copy is Command-C, Command-V, that creates a copy. Option K creates a clone. All right, you'll know, Jacob, if it's a clone, if it has this little C at the top here. Now you want to make sure you hit down option, which brings me up to another point, another common thing I see students ask me, is your clone arrows. We turn these off, we never have these on, but by default they're on. So you might see this little arrow here. Oops, let me undo that. Right, so you see how we're getting these little arrows? Okay, you can turn these off. If you just notice, I went up here in the preferences and went to my node graph and just uncheck these here. All right, to kind of get rid of those. Same way with expression arrows. That's usually a common request I get from students on how to turn those off. All right. Again, you'll notice it's a clone. Now keep in mind with clones, um, let's do something like a grade node. If I clone this grade node, all right, whichever one I affect, the other one's going to get affected as well. So this particular grade node, I'm going to say, let's move this lift. Doesn't matter, I'm just going to put 5 in here. If I look at this grade node, you'll notice that it's also at 5, okay? But now let me grab this grade node and let's affect the black point. I'll just put 100 in here. you'll notice that this one, if I double click it, this one got affected as well. So both these drive each other. So keep that in mind with the way clones work here. They don't go one direction. It's kind of they go both ways. All right. Another thing students ask me about is how to create postage stamps. All right. Let's say I make an adjustment on this guy. I'm going to reset him. Say I add some color to it. Right. And I want to be able to see visually inside the node this adjustment that I've done. I want to create a postage stamp. Right. All I need to do is highlight the node and hit Option P. All right. And that creates a little postage stamp. So now I can see that what that particular node is doing. All right. And you can do this for basically any node you want. So let's say I have a color bar here. I'm just going to do some stuff real quick, create a transform, and we'll scale this down just a little bit here. And then I'll merge it over our yellow gray node. All right. So there's our simple composite here. If I want to see what this merge node is doing, I can just highlight it and hit Option P. All right. Now it's giving me a little postage stamp of what our composite looks like. Okay. So you can turn these on and off just by hitting Option P. All right. So let's add some animation here so you guys can see the curve editor and the dope sheet. So on the transform here, I'm going to set some animation on the scale. All right. So the way we set animation is we actually have to go in the property of the scale. All right. If we go to the far right, you'll see this little squiggly line. This is our animation menu. All right. We click it and we hit set key. All right. And now we have a keyframe on that particular parameter. All right. And we know this because you see how it's highlighted blue. All right, that's visually telling us we have a key. And basically, we've kind of set it to a type of auto key system, right? Because if I go ahead to say frame 50 and I scale this down to, let's say, 0.01, I've already set another key. You see how this turned blue, right? Because I've changed it from what it was at 1. So now we've got some animation here of it scaling down. I'm just going to go all the way to the end, and we're going to scale it back up to 0.99, so almost 1. So we'll get kind of a loop going on here. So if I play through this, you can see it just kind of loops in and out. All right. So this is pretty boring looking, right? You notice we've got the properties for the scale on the viewer. All right, a couple ways we could get rid of that. We could actually turn the overlay off in the viewer just by hitting O on the keyboard, which turns the overlay off. Or if we don't want to turn the overlay off, we can just get rid of the property simply by closing the property in the properties pane. That'll get rid of it. All right. So let's go ahead and turn this back on, and let's look in our curve editor. So in our curve editor, you can see this is the curve for this particular transformation, in this case scale, right? So it's not really easing out, it's just kind of linearly just coming out, but it's kind of easing here, and then it's kind of coming back to a stop here. So we can adjust the curve just by selecting a particular keyframe. And I can adjust this so it kind of eases out here. So it's more of an ease out, and then I can kind of ease back in, do something more like that. Right? And of course we can control these handles if we wanted to. Now if I wanted to get rid of these handles, we could just right click on it and go into interpolation, and we could select linear, and that would linearize them. So now it's more like a bounce if it was hitting like a ball bouncing or something like that. Okay. If I wanted to adjust the timing of where the keyframes were, I can go into the dope sheet. All right, this shows me the keyframes here. So I could just grab them from the top. Let's move the ones from 50 to, let's say, frame 25. And the ones on 100 will move to frame 50. So we're just kind of basically taking it and just making it twice as fast, right? So now if we play through it, it now happens quicker, and then it'll hold at frame 50. Right. That's pretty much the node graph and the curve editor and the dope sheet. Okay. So basically what I've been using is, just simple color bars and grade nodes. The last thing I want to show you guys is just how we render this out. To render out of Nuke, we use a write node. So I'm going to create a write node by hitting W on the keyboard, or we can go up here to this group and create a write node that way. All right. I'm going to hold down Option and hit P just so my write node can show me. And you'll notice as I scrub through, you'll see how it updates in the little postage stamp. Now the way we use a write node is we basically just kind of start our way at the top and work our way down. So the first thing it asks us is channels that we want to render out. Definitely we want to make sure that we're rendering out our color channels. So we're going to render out RGB. Next thing we need to select is our destination. Where are we going to save this file to? It needs to know where you want to put it on your hard drive. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the file here, and we're just going to load this on our desktop. I'm just going to call this Nuke Intro Demo. And important thing here is that we need to make sure that we put in the extension, which in this case, since I'm rendering a movie, I need to put in .mov. All right, go ahead and hit save. And you'll notice, because I put that extension in, now it knows I want to render out an MOV, so it gives me the MOV option. So the codec, we're going to use the H.264 codec. I'm going to go into the Advanced tab and just uncheck both these, make sure these are off, and set my quality to best, and I'm good to go. So just go ahead and hit OK, and we're going to render frames 1 to 100. All right, looks like we're done. That didn't take long, so now we can check our movie here. So there's our awesome animation of our color bars zooming in and out. All right. Okay, so when you turn in your assignment, this is typically what you would turn in. It would be your script, right, and your movie. So you would just put these in a folder, make sure the folder is named properly, and compress it, zip it up, and this would be what you submit to FSO. You can, again, make sure that you are looking at the guidelines for the project and everything is named properly. So you're, in this case, for project 1, you're just rendering out a still image, so it's just going to be a JPEG image. And then your Nuke script, of course. All right. And other than that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to show you. So does anyone have any questions on anything that we kind of covered tonight for our first go-to training? Jacob, are you good, man? Okay, well, let me know if you need anything. Make sure you get your stuff posted. Okay, what's your problem, man? Maybe I can help you with it. Okay, so you're doing it through the grade node? Are you going into like the gain and trying to add color to it? One thing you always want to check first, Jacob, is make sure that your viewer is plugged into the right node. So you're viewing the right node. If you're not seeing something happen in the viewer, first thing I always check is making sure that my viewer node and my node graph is plugged into the right spot. So check that first. Yeah, it should come at the very bottom. And see if that fixes it. Okay, here, I'm gonna do one thing here. I'm gonna stop